All right. Welcome to Master the Game. This show is called RPG Talk with Juice. Today is going to be a solo show. I've got nothing planned. Was originally planning on having Joseph Alexander from the Xander brand on, but he has become ill. So he couldn't make it today. But that's okay. We've got guests lined up for Thursday. We've got guests lined up for next week. We've got guests lined up for the week after that. So we've got plenty of interviews coming up for you guys. And I'm pretty excited about it. We've had only a few shows since we've kind of brought this back. You know, we had Becky Rose last week from Con Plus 3, and that was really cool. I've done a solo show before, so I'm no stranger to doing this, you know. I am, however, going on just a couple hours of sleep. We stayed up late last night after the kids went to bed to watch episode 9 of Star Wars. Not going to spoiler anything. But we both really enjoyed the movie. It was good for what it was. You know, my wife and I tend to like all the Star Wars movies, so even the prequels. I don't think she was really into Solo as much as I was. I thought it was good. Again, I know most diehard fans didn't like it. Rogue One is my all-time favorite Star Wars movie. In fact, I've been itching to watch that again, and maybe I will this week. But yeah, so we stayed up late to watch that, and then afterwards we were talking about the movie and where they're gonna go with the franchise and things like that, and I just couldn't sleep. And I also had some conversations with some designers about coming on this show, and a couple from Green Ronin. I've been talking to Troy over at Green Ronin about running or playing in either a Dragon Age or Fantasy Age game by Green Ronin on this channel. I'm not sure if he's reached out to any of the designers himself about playing in it. You know, we haven't gotten that much organized, unfortunately. Wish we were a little further with that, but you know, I'll shoot him an email today and just ask him again what the plan is. But I do have about 2 or 3 game designers and writers from Green Ronin who have volunteered to come on the show. And again, I'm really excited about that. So if there's somebody you would like to see on the show, make sure you comment with that, and I will make a note of it and reach out to them. So, or if you even want to tag them about reaching out to me, that works as well. So, like I said, we are booked up for a couple weeks. However, I can also record some of those in the evenings if that works better for their schedule, and then we'll just post it at the normal time going forward. So anyways, was talking to my friend last night, Aaron, who's been working on his system, Rad Wasteland. He has mostly finished his backgrounds. It's a post-apocalyptic. I view it as like a steampunk Wild West. He always describes it as just post-apocalyptic Wild West. It's got droids in it. It's got other things, and he uses a narrative dice system very similar to Fantasy Flight game Star Wars. And so if you're into that system, you'll love this system right off the bat. It's got some really cool stuff in it. I've had the privilege of seeing it and looking through his document. And you know, Aaron is extremely creative. I just want to give him props for what he's doing. And it's not easy assembling a system the way I think he is. You know, going pretty much off of scratch. You know, like everybody knows how a D20 system works. They come up with like a fun narrative dice system that has all sorts of possibilities with character creation and things like that. It's difficult, you know, especially when you're incorporating a lot of different technology and then you're trying to balance it all. So I think he's onto something really cool, and I can't wait to see that develop further. Hopefully one day I'll have him on here to talk about what he's been working on, and you know, he can share it with the world. So he has kind of play tested some things here and there, and I believe he will be doing some more of that this summer. So if that's something you're interested in, head on over to my Discord, and maybe I can help set something up where maybe I can play, you guys can play, and Aaron will run the game for us. I have been talking to a couple other friends who are working on their own systems, and they kind of run the gamut. Like people have got all sorts of ideas, and it's really cool to see. I'm personally working on my own D20 thing. It's nothing too innovative, like what some of my friends are working on, but it's something that I'm enjoying doing. And what else can you hope for than making something you enjoy, right? So I don't know. It's fun. It's a lot of people will say, "Oh, don't create your own system. There's already systems out there for it." Yada yada yada. Whatever. Create a system if you want. Have fun with it. There's no reason not to, right? Um, I think once you start working on your own system, especially if you are influenced by others, you look at things a little differently. You start, and again, I'm not somebody who's designed my own system. I've done house rules and stuff before, which I tend to keep a little light in my own personal games, but I tinker with mechanics. I like it. I've always liked it. I always come up with little ideas here and there, and I like to tinker with them. It's just something that interests me. So if that's interesting to you, why not tinker with stuff? So I say go for it. So I have a huge interest in trying Pathfinder Second Edition. That's a game I have not played. I'm also interested in trying Fantasy Age and Dragon Age, which I own both of those ones at least. These are games I want to play. I want to see. Obviously, I've read the Pathfinder playtest partially, the Second Edition playtest, and I know they've changed things. And I've read my Dragon Age book cover to cover, or no, my Fantasy Age book cover to cover. I've read most of the Dragon Age book, and I get the idea for the system. I understand kind of how it works, but I've never played it, so I haven't seen how these things come up in play and things like that. And so I would really like to try those soon. Obviously, I was talking again with Aaron last night, and was explaining how like I've got all this stuff going on, even though I'm home, right? Like daddy daycare all day. I've got 3 kids. That's what I do. This morning, that's what I was doing. Like I said, we went to bed late. I was up at 5 with our 1-year-old and our 5-year-old. So this morning I was like I took care of lunch, took care of some stuff, cleaned up a little bit so my wife, who works during the day from home, wouldn't have to worry about anything. And as soon as I sat down, I'm like dozing off. I was so tired, right? You can't just do that though with a 1-year-old, right? So that was difficult. Luckily, I picked him up for a little bit. He did fall asleep for about 20 minutes, which allowed me to fall asleep for about 20 minutes, which was good. Obviously I know this is all like not a lot of RPG stuff, but I'm getting to it, I promise. So I will be, after this, going back inside. Hopefully the 2 youngest will be taking a nap. We did tell our 5-year-old he wouldn't have to today. So I'll probably be doing the same thing until dinner time when my wife gets off at work. We will eat dinner, and then I will have the evening to myself if I want, right? So that's like 6:30 onward. But I'm going on 2 hours of sleep. So this is like almost every day for me. Sometimes I get a little more sleep. If I decide to have a night where, say, I run a game, so Wednesday night, for example, I will be up till probably midnight, and then hopefully I can fall asleep after. But if it's a really fun session, there's no way I'm falling asleep before 1 o'clock. I'll then be up whenever the kids are up, which is usually between 5 and 6:30, and I will repeat this cycle every single day. So especially when I do stuff at night, that's when I hurt the next day, and I'm useless when it comes to anything creative, it seems, wanting to do videos or run or play a game. And I prep for my games. I try to prep ahead of time, but I still, so for example, I have a game tomorrow night. I still need to read up on my prep that I did the night before my game. So I always do that. So tonight I will try to read up on what I have prepped for tomorrow night's game. And then if I feel like I'm lacking some stuff or I have a new idea or a different idea, I'll put it in there. And then tomorrow, hopefully about an hour before the game, I'll read over those notes again so that I feel ready. So that's kind of the gist of it, right? That's 5 days a week where no matter what, it's on again, off again, struggle to get enough sleep, but do the things I want to do when it comes to writing my own system, writing my own game world, prepping for my games, running my games. It's tough. And, Obviously, I put it on myself because it's something I want to do, um, and that's okay, right? So yeah, I have tremendous respect for people who do this for like create games for a living or run multiple games a week. I can't wrap my head around it. Obviously, it'd be a little different if I didn't have kids. I feel like because I could sleep in a little and probably just be creative all the time. But I do have kids. That's the reality I live in. So, uh, you know, it it's okay. It works the way it does. Now, weekends you would think, oh, okay, he'll do a bunch of creative stuff. No, that's family time usually. I'll play a game a Saturday night. I don't play games Sunday. So I do get to sleep in on Saturday and Sunday. My wife grants me that. Tomorrow she said she'll try and let me sleep in until she has to go to work. Or go to work. As in, go to her little office in our house for work at about almost 8 o'clock. So she did say she'd let me sleep tomorrow a little bit. Um, so I do get to sleep in on the weekend a little bit. And then, like this last weekend, was doing yard work. I got house stuff to do. I still got to spend time with the kids. Still got to spend time with the wife. So it's crazy busy. And I know people have asked me, how come I haven't been putting out the videos that I was doing before that were more like RPG tips and things like that? This is why. I just have not had the time. I run, like I said, the Wednesday game. I've got the Descent into Avernus game that I run monthly. I've got the Blackrock Adventures game that is supposed to be a monthly game. And I produce a Wildmount game on Fridays, which that one's cool because I can just basically do some overlays, show up, make sure things are going well, audio-wise, video-wise. I can converse and chat with people. So that game doesn't take anything out of me. And while listening to the stream, I sometimes can write on the side, some notes and things like that for games or, whatever I feel like doing. So that's not too bad, actually. And I could have my other laptop open and be writing stuff. So yeah, that's what I have going on. So now that I've bored you guys with 10 minutes of my life, let's talk about some cool stuff, right? Let's get into that. So was looking at some things the other day for 5th edition D&D, and I've talked to you guys about this before. I thought it would be cool if we could do more with like different weapons, create a different feel for it. And this is something I'm kind of working on with my own system anyways, but I thought, why not create feats for these weapons, right? Like a feat for a dagger, right? Just call it Dagger Master. And I think I've talked about this before, but a Dagger Master feat that allows you to do multiple attacks. So for every regular attack, you get a second attack. So it's basically a built-in extra attack for every time you attack, only with a dagger. That's still not like game breaking, but it might be enough to motivate somebody to say, I'm going to use my dagger rather than my short sword, or my dagger rather than my long sword. Because I would rather roll 2d4 for every dagger attack rather than 1d8 for every longsword attack, right? Because you also get your modifier twice rather than just the once. So, it makes sense that would be more optimal. And you do the same thing with other stuff, but rather than give them an extra attack, maybe they take longsword and allows them to do some kind of a parry, right? Or a disarming attack as well as attack the foe. Something like that would be kind of cool. Giving them the chance to render armor useless with, say, a Morning Star or a flail, right? Flail Master, pow, hits the armor and damages it so much it's a -1 AC. No, like it's the regular armor class, but it drops it down by 1. I think that would be really, really cool, personally. Again, I know these things aren't for everybody, but I thought having some cool feats to switch the game up a little bit would be awesome. My wife in our Blackrock Adventures game wants to dual wield flails, right? She took the dual wielder feat, I think, for the armor class bump, and I'm going to let her do it. So she the flails she wants to use aren't the ones where it's like a stick with a little tiny flail at the end. She wants like the ball and chain type flails. So I'm gonna work with her on that, and I think we're gonna come up with a homebrew feat that might be really cool for her to take in a couple levels. Um, she's a barbarian. They just hit 4th level, and I'm not sure which attribute she's gonna or what she's gonna do at 4th level with her feat or ASI, but yeah, she said it. She's not gonna bump her strength, so she's more of a Dex Con based barbarian right now, and that's because she wants the good armor class. But I think her strength's only like a 14 or something, and which is fine. I told her, you could still bump your strength a bit, and actually do quite a bit more damage if you do it right. And so, but I encourage people to play whatever character they want. We have a monk in our group that has had some really cool roles at really great times when it comes to like insight checks and stuff. However, when she goes to attack or make a saving throw, she's not doing as well. She's getting her butt kicked, which I think is fantastic. So, yeah, I got to look at. In fact, I got to message her and see what her idea is for her character moving forward. I want her to, still experience some cool stuff rather than getting dropped almost every time in combat. Because that was what was happening, and this last session would have continued to happen. But luckily, she was they were in tight spots in a dungeon, and she was actually positioned pretty well to defend herself and not be like in the front. So that was good. A couple times in the wilderness encounters, she was in the front, and so that wasn't so good. But yeah, so got to see what she wants to do with her character, where she envisions it, anything she thinks would be awesome or fun for her to do, and go with that. And yeah, but we have a cleric, a warlock, a monk, and a barbarian. So it's a fun, interesting group. No area of effect yet. I don't think they will end up with any area of effect. So that also... Dang. I have to wrap this up early. I'm yawning too much. That might also change quite a bit with not how I prep things, because I don't usually prep based on my players too much. But I know that if I were to throw a lot of weaker enemies at them, they probably will get messed up still. Because they don't have the area of effect. Whereas if they had the area of effect, at least they could like wipe out a large number of them, on a turn or two. So that's kind of the challenge there. Whereas if a party is strong in area of effect and they're not doing massive damage, well then it's the opposite, right? You can throw waves at them and they can handle them, but then when you throw like bigger, tougher enemies, that's where they struggle, right? It's that whole every group has its strengths and every group has its weaknesses. This group can do well against a single bad guy, right? It's when you throw waves of smaller enemies or medium enemies that they'll struggle. They seem to understand focus fire though, so that's good. It's funny when you play with groups and someone's like, I got 2 attacks, I want to attack this one and this one. It's like, all right, but that's really not optimal. Because now the action economy of the bad guys is still doing quite a bit to you. So I don't usually spend a lot of time like teaching my group's tactics or anything like that. But if I do see that they're getting frustrated and they feel like they're unable to handle the encounters I've given them, and they don't seem to understand why, but there's something glaring about it like that, I will say, well, the 3 of you were all attacking different creatures, whereas if you all attacked one with your solo attacks, it would actually make it easier, because they would, after a couple rounds or a round, you're eliminating a monster at a time rather than eliminating all 3 on that 3rd round. So basically that's being attacked 9 times rather than being attacked 3, 5, 6 times, right? So it's just simple math there, right? So that's why Focus Fire is so good. And if you're fighting weaker monsters, that's why it's so good to have area of effect rather than solo attacks. So again, it's just a different way to handle encounters, different ways to build your party out, things like that. And I think it's fascinating, and that's part of what makes trying to balance encounters in 5e so difficult, right? The CR is not an exact science. It can't be, because you have the tactics. Those tactics and builds in and of themselves, like, you can't say that, oh, my solo attack is better than this area of effect attack that doesn't do as much damage, because it's situational still, right? Like, I'm doing 12 damage roughly, we'll say on average, to this one monster. That's great, but he's doing 4 to like 3 monsters. Like, if you're fighting 3 monsters with little hit points, well, his is better. Otherwise, you're still making 3 different attacks. That's still 3 rounds of being attacked. Whereas he's doing that and maybe getting attacked once, So again, that's why CR is not an exact science. It never will be in 5th edition. It's impossible to make it work like that. And that's why you have to take into account, you can't just do the math. You have to take into account character abilities if you want balanced encounters, or if you want a certain specific feel, right? You need to identify your party's weaknesses and strengths. And I've had this talk in the past with the DM that I used to have, who he couldn't wrap his head around it. He didn't understand why he did the math. It was a deadly encounter, but the party wiped it out, no problem. It's like, well, what's your party build like? Oh, okay, so they all like can hit hard on a single thing. Great. Oh, they've got a paladin who can smite. Okay, yeah. Okay, they got a barbarian with rage. Okay, so again, so that barbarian had like 70 some hit points, but when it's raging, it's got like 140. Okay, so this group was built to take on big solo monsters. It's not built to take on small waves or small groups of monsters, like large groups of monsters that are weaker, So I've tried to teach people this, and a couple people have been like, well, that's stupid. The game's broken, blah, blah. Like, I've had this debate, and it's like, it's not broken. It's just not. And they're like, well, it is, because you should be able to do the math, and there's no reason that the math is wrong. Like, there's no reason it should be wrong. And it's like, well, yes, there is a reason. Like, these are 2 different ways of doing it. So you still need to figure out, which isn't hard to figure out, if your party is a strong solo monster group, or if they're an area of effect group, or a little bit, of both, but they lean one way or the other. It's not hard to figure that out. You just gotta, play a session with them. You'll know real quick. Oh, they're doing the spiked growth. Oh, they're doing thunder wave. Oh, they're doing fireball. All of those are area of effect spells, which is different than Eldritch Blast and Guiding Bolt and Firebolt and, Smite, regular attack. Like, that stuff is not area of effect. And I would argue fighters and things like that, the martial classes, once they get multi-attack, that can be kind of like an area of effect, because if they kill something on one hit, they can kill something on their second hit, and so on. So, I wouldn't say that's a heavy area of effect. I'd say it's very minor, right? But yeah, and I'm going to do a video. I know I've been saying this for like a year, but I do plan on doing a video on how I prepare my encounters, because I do think that's a strength of mine. I understand I sometimes struggle with prepping campaigns and adventures. Well, maybe not campaigns. I think I actually have good campaigns. I think I struggle with individual adventures, especially with like trying to give hooks and information to lead things correctly. But I think I do a good job making encounters tough that I want to be tough. I do a good job with making encounters that can really test certain players in my group when I'm going for that. And I try to mix it up. So I try to make it so not every session the same person is on the ropes. You know what I mean? So for example, it was so funny when we went to play our BlackRock Adventures game this week. I did have it in my mind that in the last session, our monk was attacked a lot and she was dropped a lot, didn't get a lot of chances to shine. And I didn't go into it setting forth to target our barbarian or anything like that. However, I know in small confines of a dungeon, typically the strongest frontline character with like the best armor class or the most hit points is typically in the front. And so it was kind of set up where the barbarian was going to probably be the target of most attacks, depending on what happens, right? And our monk still was the target of quite a few and was in situations where she was targeted first. And, but it worked out great. We even had a couple moments where our cleric was targeted. Now, our cleric was a human. He's got heavy armor master, where it's a damage reduction of 3. And every normal, slashing, piercing, bludgeoning damage. But he also had, so my wife's barbarian is an ancestral barbarian, ancestral guardian barbarian. So anyone that attacks someone, anyone she's attacked, the first guy she's attacked, if they attack somebody else, they get disadvantage. If they hit still, it's also resistance. So our cleric had the 3 resistance, plus he had the resistance of the barbarian. So again, she was really helping his character. It was awesome, actually. And, so I when doing these things, these builds, like that is really hard to account for. In fact, I forgot she had that ability. We had talked about it when she created her character, and we're, like I said, they're level 4 now, and we were playing like once a month. So when she made that character, I remember talking about it with her, and it totally escaped my mind. Like I forgot about it. And then the session it was happening, I'm like, oh man, like I wish I remembered that, because if I remembered that, I probably would have made these monsters tougher. Now the thing about these monsters though is they did have, the party doesn't have a lot of magic items. The monsters had resistance to practically anything, any normal attacks they were immune to. So bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. But they had resistance to a few different things. And then they had, like if you had a magical weapon, you could deal normal damage, basically. And there were a couple other things that dealt normal damage as well. And luckily, they had got a dagger that early in the session, from a Fey spirit, per se. And so that was helpful. And that, luckily, the barbarian was using. The monk doesn't have magical weapons, so she wasn't dealing any damage. Obviously, the warlock was doing Eldritch Blast. He was doing well. The cleric was doing Guiding Bolt and did some other things before he couldn't hurt anymore. So then he started doing, what was he doing? He was doing like a dodge or some kind of a defensive action, which also granted disadvantage to the villain. So obviously he didn't have to. Oh no, he was trying to get them to attack him. He was trying to distract them or whatever. So in other words, they would have had disadvantage if they attacked him or if they attacked the barbarian or somebody else. And so I had them attacking him because of that. But then I realized, oh, he's got the extra resistance and stuff. And then she's got the resistance that she grants and stuff. So, hey, Daniel Mendoza, welcome to our chat. We were supposed to have a guest on today. He fell ill, let me know a few minutes before we went on. And so it's solo today, but I'm finding myself having some fun. It took me a minute. It took about 10 minutes before I got into talking about anything good. So I'm going to timestamp this episode afterwards, I think. Got some cool guests coming up in the next few weeks, too. We've got some Green Ronin guests. We've got, Maximum Apocalypse, I think is the name of it. Creator coming on here. We've got a Paizo creator coming on here. So yeah, it's going to be cool. We're going to have a good couple weeks here, and who knows? Maybe some of them will be willing to record at night, and I will do this more than just Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'll just throw on some of these ones that we do at night, which I'll record, and then I'll just upload them at the 1 o'clock time, and we'll see. So, yeah, we've got quite a few people. We got a DM's Guild writer coming on. I think we're going to record that this weekend, and then I'll put it up probably a week after. So it's exciting. I'm really enjoying doing this, and it's a bummer I'm doing a solo show today, but I have no problem talking to you guys. You know how it goes. So, I was having a talk with someone the other day about how do I determine if I'm going to review things. If how I'm going to review a book and stuff. Well, first of all, I talked about it at the beginning of this. I don't have a ton of time to review a lot of stuff. I do not like spending my time reading on a laptop, on a screen. I can't stand it. I do enough on screens. I prefer physical books. I just cruise through the book that my wife got me like 2 weeks ago. I'm almost done with it. And that's just reading like 10 minutes here and there. I like physical books that I can bring with me, set them down places, pick it up, read it. And so when people want me to review a product, that's like rule number one. Like, gotta send me a physical book, and I go from there. There's projects that I get really excited about that I'll review just for a physical product. There's projects that I'm less enthused about that, I might ask them if they're willing to pay for a review. Obviously, that incentivizes the review. It speeds things up. If I'm getting paid to do something, I'm going to do it like right away, right? So that kind of is what determines it for me. And I like learning new systems. I like reviewing things. I would not say I'm a large YouTuber. I'm a very tiny, small YouTuber that has a awesome, smaller community that I enjoy socializing with. I've got friends who are huge, right? WASD20 Nate, Luke from the DM Lair, Cody from Taking 20. Those are much bigger channels. I don't know what Luke's at now, but he's growing pretty quickly. He's awesome. His channel's great. And I would not be surprised if in a year he is one of, if not the biggest YouTuber out there, or competing for that spot, right? I don't even think that's something that he necessarily cares about. I think he's just enjoying putting out good content for you guys. But beats me. I don't know. You'd have to ask him that. But Cody, I think, is the largest one right now. I think he's over 200,000 subscribers, and he's doing his thing over there. But he I don't know how he determines his reviews, but I'm sure he can charge for all of them because his time is valuable, and he probably gets far more inquiries. But I get an inquiry maybe once a week about reviewing a product, and most of the time, I've even had people offer me money up front for me to do a review, and I'm like, look, one, this isn't something I'm that into. I'll ask them some questions. I'll usually reject it if I don't think I can provide them value. And that's just how I am. So, probably should take more of those deals, though. Daniel Mendoza. Sounds exciting. Sucks the guest couldn't come. Yeah, for sure. So Thursday, Owen, I feel terrible. Owen Stevens, I think, is going to be on. Let me pull it up and confirm the name. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I've been friends with him for a while. He's a game designer, writer, really cool guy, lots of connections. Yeah, Owen Stevens. Owen KC Stevens. So he will be on Thursday. I'm really excited about that. He's got some things he's promoting. So looking forward to asking him a little bit about those things and learning. And, learning about him. I think the big thing about this that I really enjoy is the idea that I'm going to get to know some of the designers a little more. Because I'll be honest, there's a lot of games that I've played that I don't even pay attention to who wrote it, Obviously, Wizards of the Coast, I know a lot of the bigger names, right? But that's mostly because of YouTube and stuff. It's not because I open the book and I'm like, oh, who wrote this book? It's just not what I do. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know some people in the industry a little more. I think that's going to be a lot of fun for me. And getting the insight into what goes on into working on these projects. Where does it start? You know, how do you get from nothing to this finished, beautiful product, right? That to me is fascinating. You know, when I go to gaming conventions, I love to go to the seminars where they talk about game design, where they talk about writing or funding Kickstarters, or, you know, all of that stuff. Um, you know, how to pitch board games. Like I went to a board game once. I'm not a big board gamer, but the creative process is very interesting to me. It's always been creative. It's always been interesting to me. Even when I was a kid, there was a book I remember in elementary school renting out, and I don't remember if it was about wargaming or not. It was a book for elementary school kids, right? It had stuff in there like egg cartons that were used for hills, and like use your rubber bands and paper containers and you know whatever for like to make cannons that can shoot things, and it was like how to make your own games basically with household supplies. Because I even think those are the ones that really stood out, like some of those projects in the book. Trying to remember back if they were like non-war projects. I can't remember well. But I remember renting that book out like multiple times, wanting to do stuff at home and never actually getting the chance to make those. We're probably talking about somewhere between 92 and 1995. Somewhere in that time period is when this book was out, right? Or 1991 to 1995, somewhere. And again, it was, as a kid, I thought that was cool. I've always enjoyed the creative process. I love watching crafting channels. Like, I watch Black Magic Craft, and I don't have a foam cutter. I don't have the carpentry skills he has, but I love watching that stuff. I like seeing people create. I like thinking that I can create something. Because that's what happens, too. I've been telling my wife for 3 years now. Actually, maybe even longer than that. 5 years now. Hey, we should get a hot wire foam cutter. I would love to make some good-looking terrain. Like, all of a sudden I'm going to have this tool, and now my terrain looks great, right? I can't paint miniatures. I still want to buy unpainted miniatures because I'm crazy. But, you know, so I don't know. There's a lot of things that interest me when it comes to that. You know, I like the idea of writing. I have a Pinterest board that is about writing and tips to be a good writer. I'm never going to write a book, like a chapter book about that's just a story. I'm never going to do that. But I totally add stuff to this board all the time, right? I don't know why. I do plan on writing something someday. I want to create my own game system. I want to make my homebrew world into a book, a print-on-demand book that I can give to my players that play my games. I think that would be awesome, you know, to have, this is my homebrew world. Feel free to read whatever you want. Here you go, you know. That's something that's like a dream of mine. You know, it's like a bucket list item. So, and my wife knows that. That one's a big one. I've talked to her about that. She's said, "Yep, when you finish it, I'll edit it for you and read it and let you know what I think." And here and then I'll send her something and be like, "Hey, can you just read this?" You know. And I've thought about, for my Patreon people, anyone who's donating, making articles that are going to end up in that, like little articles. So, for example, the best one I've written so far is my Anvil Ringers one. I haven't shared that yet with my patrons. Right now I only have one patron, though, so, you know. It's just Garrett from DMG Info, right? Go support him, 7D System. No, I love him. I love Garrett. Gareth. It's Gareth. I always call him Garrett because I knew a kid in high school named Garrett. But yeah, I want to release stuff on there as I write it. Haven't made that official yet on the Patreon, but I will. In fact, maybe I'll do that tonight after I read up my notes. So yeah, I know, all over the place with all these things I want to do. I love the creative process, and I think that's part of the reason I sometimes bite off a lot of little projects here. These interviews, as long as I get guests, those will keep going because I think that's cool. And as long as I'm home. Once things go back to working, there's a chance I might not return to work. I don't know. Um, it's going to be a tough decision because, you know, obviously we have to think about our health. Uh, I struggle with like diabetes a little bit, so that puts me in that riskier category. And reading now what people go through that get it, and how like even nurses and doctors aren't sure if you're going to make it once you get into like the ICU or in the emergency room, is kind of terrifying. And I know it's such a small percentage, but so that's something I've got to think about, when it comes to going back to work, right? I work in car sales. I interact with people I don't know daily, and gotta. You don't have to, but people shake hands and stuff like that. So that is going to be a tough decision to make. And I'd like to return to work. I'm gung ho about selling cars. That was something I really wanted to do, and I think I can be great at it. But it's not worth my health, right? So we'll see. We've talked about it a few times. Originally, it was, hey, if they force us to go back to work, because I'm in Michigan too, so we're on that shutdown. But it was like, oh, if May 1st rolls around and they need us to go back to work, I wasn't going to do it. And I don't know if the company would hold my spot or not. I hope they would, but if things don't get better, right now they're thinking May 15th, so that's 10 days from now. And the hardware store here in town, people aren't following the rules. Like it was packed. The room is as wide as, the whole store is like as wide as this room, maybe a little bit wider. And then it's this long strip, and it was packed. So, that worries me a little bit, that causes me some stress. And I don't care if other people put themselves at risk. That's your choice, just like I don't care if in your own home you're doing whatever. Like, do your thing, man. If you're into popping pills or whatever and you're not harming anyone else, I don't give a crap. The only time I care is if they're doing crap like that and then driving down the street, or they're doing it and neglecting their children. Like, stuff like that bothers me. But I'm very much hey, do your thing, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But yeah, so anyways, that's been on my mind a little bit too. So, it is what it is. And I'm going to continue doing these interviews. I'm going to continue doing my videos and working on my own setting, working on my own RPG. I'm going to continue all of that stuff because that's stuff that I enjoy. It gets me excited to, when I do make progress on those things. I get a little bit, giddy sometimes, like when I feel like I made a lot of good progress on something like that. That the moment I publish a video that I'm proud of, I get really excited, and I'll check back, that day, and I'll check back the next day and see, if people are commenting and liking it, because that's exciting stuff. It's fun. It's fun for me, and that's why I do it, So yeah, I don't know. I used to love when we played Provokers. Like, we had so many people comment and ask us questions. That was the highlight of my YouTube stuff. And, obviously that was on Matt Click's channel, but it was so cool interacting with people and people saying, oh, watching your game really inspired me to play my character a certain way. And it's so much more enjoyable now that I am. Or, you showed our group some really fun narrative ways to do things, and, we're doing it now. I love that stuff. Or you showed me that online RPGs can be a lot of fun to play too, rather than just in person. Because a lot of people struggle to find in-person games. So, obviously I'm one of the lucky ones. I know there's some other people, but I've struggled too over the years. I struggled when we were living on the other side of the state to find some groups. So it's not easy for everybody. Especially if you've got kids, you have a limited schedule, you work weird hours, all of those things are big factors. So, for example, I have somebody in my Discord right now who is trying to find a Sunday morning game. So if anybody has availability on Sunday mornings and is looking for a player or wants to start a group, I've got the person for you. So come on over to my Discord, and they just have to be done, I think, by 2 p.m. Eastern time is the idea. So if that sounds like something you can do, you can play at 10, 9 a.m. on a Sunday, then there you go. Got someone for you. So, um, but yeah, so miniature painting. We have not been doing that. It was easier to do when we had to do minis before our next games. Now that all of our games are online at the moment, it has not been an important thing to do. um, I don't know when we're going to pick that up again. There's still some miniatures I want painted. I thought about just taking some of my miniatures inside that I want painted and being like, here you go, Paula, you can paint them in here. They don't have to be on stream. So, I'm also going to be posting more graphics, like not graphics, memes and stuff on my Facebook page and Instagram. Would love for you guys to interact. Yesterday I posed a question of what was the most underused die. D12 seems to be winning. A couple people said like percentiles. I've seen D2 a couple times, D4. And would love to hear you guys' thoughts on those over on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter, I think I've even shared those. Today I posted what was like the ideal meal before a gaming session, and that was just because I was hungry, and so I made it. I was like, oh, here's a picture of a burger and some fries, and it looks good, and I'm hungry, so let's just make this. But I was thinking, I was like, man, we used to make dinner for our gaming groups before our game sessions. And so people would show up, we'd feed them dinner, and our expectation was that they would bring soda or something to drink and snacks. That's it. And it could be the same person, it could rotate. We didn't care how it was done. That was our expectation, and we'll feed you guys a good meal beforehand. We did spaghetti a bunch, we did pizza a couple times, my wife made this really good stew one time that was in the crock pot all day. She made like this chicken dinner thing that was fantastic. She did a lot of good stuff for dinners. But I was thinking, I'm like, man, I am dying. Like, so lately, I obviously can't go to restaurants and eat, but I really want Red Lobster. That's like one of my favorite restaurants. And my birthday was a month ago. It was April 3rd, which we didn't do anything. I didn't get any presents, because this whole pandemic thing. My wife tried to make it special. We had like a fun little scavenger hunt thing with the kids. So that was cool, to do something with the kids. But no, we normally we would go out. I'd get to pick where I go to eat, and I might get to pick up a video game or a new gaming book or something. Well, I didn't get to do that this year. And usually I'd pick like something like, I'll pick Red Lobster, or I'll go to, a Chinese buffet or something I really have been wanting. And so since my birthday, and even a little before my birthday, I've just been wanting Red Lobster. I love the Cheddar Bay biscuits. I love practically anything from there. I mean, coconut shrimp, And here I am. I had 2 hot dogs for lunch, and I'm starving thinking about food. But yeah, so I'm going to have more graphics like that up. So would love to see you guys interact over on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. If you guys want specific people brought on here again, let me know. Tag them, tag me, whatever. And we'll ask them the questions you want to know. It could be YouTubers, Twitch streamers, game designers, game design company owners, writers, whatever. People who make dice, people who make miniatures. I am willing to have whoever wants to really come on and talk RPGs and, or talk about a product they're working on. Totally cool with that. So it's also far easier to have somebody on who has a product rather than reviewing a product. Reviewing a product takes a lot of time. And if it's not something you're actually passionate about, it can take even longer, and it's hard to get through sometimes. There was a guy who sent me a product gosh, we're talking 5 years ago. It was probably the first time I was ever asked to review something. And I didn't review it. I never finished it. He sent me a PDF. So didn't pay me, just sent me a PDF. And it's like, hey, can you review this? And I said, I'll look at it. And, I said, if I like it, I'll review it. And I still have the PDF. Actually saw it the other day. And it uses a deck of cards. That's it. That's what you use for your mechanics. And I think it's an RPG. I was like kind of reading through it and wasn't interested. The card mechanic thing threw me off. Like it just kind of was like, oh, I don't know if I want that. Like I really like rolling dice. so I started reading through it. It seemed written fine. It looked like a coloring book because it was all black and white. And it just didn't appeal to me. So I never finished, never reviewed it. And it was funny because he didn't, I don't think he emailed it to me. I think he sent it to me over Messenger. And I never could remember who it was that sent it to me. Otherwise, I would have sent him back a message saying, hey, I tried to read through it, couldn't make through it, whatever. I would have told him, time commitment with all the stuff I was doing was the real problem because it ultimately was. It still is kind of a problem at times. I still haven't read half my D&D books, and those are things I want to read. So, yeah. And, it is what it is. I'm being incredibly vulnerable today and talking about everything. I did go through my miniature case, my display case, took out some of the miniatures, and it doesn't look as cluttered, but it's still pretty cluttered. Been thinking about dropping the green screen back here, rearranging some stuff, maybe putting my desk over here so that I get the natural light from the window on my door. But then I was like, oh, my internet cord might not reach. So that's one of those things where I'm like, ooh, so I got to measure and see if I can get my internet cord over the door, over the other door, and then down over here. Because right now it comes in on this side, on the other side of my door from the garage, and then comes over to the table. And that's great. So I just need to see if I can do it the other way. But I feel like that would be a much better setup for me when it comes to live streaming. So, I haven't been able to read my RPG book, but mostly just overthinking. Yeah, like I love reading gaming, like not necessarily gaming mechanics. I don't love just sitting there reading gaming mechanics front to back. But I love at least like reading through my gaming books every now and then. Like I've got my Pathfinder 1 ebook is right here on my table because I've been looking at that for ideas and seeing how like some of the feats were done. I had Dragon Age and Fantasy Age out because I wanted to play those and I was looking at those. I was looking at Fantasy Age a lot because I love... So Fantasy Age is a very thin book. I don't feel like there's a ton in it, but what is in it I think is really good. I like how you can pick a race, and that does not mean you get plus to this, plus to that, plus to this, plus to that, this ability. You choose a race, and then you can choose abilities or roll on the table for what abilities you're going to get. Love that. Because it means like every dwarf is different from other dwarves, right? That's cool to me. Like I feel like that's how games should be done instead of just this, okay, you chose this is what you are. Boom. These are your abilities. That's just how it is. I like having some variety among the races. I hate that when I go to play, like, for example, D&D, that the party knows automatically what other people can do just because of their race and class. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I know you're this and that. Okay, yeah, I know that this is what you're going to do then. And I'm this and that, so this is what I'm always going to do. I wish there was a little more variety. So again, 5e is my favorite system right now. But I haven't played a ton of systems. So there's a chance if I played Pathfinder 2nd Edition right now, it would be my new favorite game. There's a definite chance of that. Because I like the idea of the variety of builds and things like that. I don't like playing the same character every time. I absolutely hate that. I hate that, when I go, like if I had to make a character right now for a game, I'll be honest, I like martial characters. So I would probably lean that way. Or I would take something that is not a martial character and try to make it martial. For example, a warlock. I'd probably be a human, and then I'd work up to be Pact of the Blade, and I'd be a human so I can get that feat at first level. But I would do something like Pact of the Blade. I would get that dark vision, like that true sight or whatever it is, devil sight. I would get the armor that you can cast at any time, basically at free will, and then the bonded weapon that you're automatically proficient in. Those three things, and now I'm a martial character. I can now be up front, and yeah, my hit points aren't as much, but I've got all that stuff, right? I could then, with the feet, I could do a lot of different things. I could dual wield. I could go with something for weapons, right? Like say it's a great weapon I want to use. Then I could take Great Weapon Master. Say it's a ranged weapon I want to use. I could do something there. I could take the resistance thing where it's -3 on the armor. No, because that's heavy armor master. I could do things that would make my character more useful, right? Take movement or whatever. So that's probably what I would do. And I think that would be a lot of fun. And now it's a martial warlock, right? But I know what it's going to look like. If I take a fighter, I know what it's going to be. Like, yeah, you can change the fighting style, but ultimately you're probably going to be the frontline character. And you're going to go up and hit it with your sword. If you're a cleric, you're mostly going to heal or buff, occasionally use damage dealing spells, which I always go against type, and I use all my spells for damage pretty much. And I'll try to keep a reserve of like healing word or something. But it's the same. Every time I make a cleric, it's pretty much the same thing. Every time I make a fighter, pretty much the same thing. Change some weapons out, whatever. And I'm just less good at the same thing, or I'm much better at the same thing. Like I might be much better at dealing damage, but now I'm less better, not as good at, absorbing hits, right? Because I have a lower armor class, but it's the same character, So that's why I'm intrigued by second edition Pathfinder. I just don't have the money to buy the books, It'll happen. Eventually I think I will bite the bullet and get it and play it, but I haven't even been able to really set up a group for it. I've got one, possibly two people interested, but nobody's interested in DMing it. Which actually, if I could get if my friend Paul would DM it, I think that would be interesting. And then we could see about getting maybe 2 more people to play. That might work. But again, I'd still need to get at least the core book to create characters. Yeah, I don't know. I'll see what I can do. I really need to just do it. I need to somehow at least play a one-shot to see if I like it. Because that's the other thing. Buying something when money's tight is not smart. So it might be one of those things where you got to try it first to see if you like it and then buy it. Yeah, having the same character made isn't fun. Right, that's my big gripe about most D20 games is that it's packages. It's like the fighter package, the dwarf package. A dwarf fighter package looks the same almost every time. An elven fighter package looks a little different, but it's this, you're not making meaningful choices usually once you pick your race and class. And a lot of people I know who don't like class systems, that is why. Because there isn't a lot of variety. And they can't tailor the character a specific way. However, I feel like 3.5, Pathfinder, both kind of adjusted that a little bit. And people, I think, got a lot of use out of that game. It sounds like second edition Pathfinder does something similar. However, they do have some things that are very specifically class feats, class abilities, that, from what I've heard, makes other classes not as much fun as they used to be. like for example, I think only a couple classes get like opportunity attacks, which from early on things I heard when it first came out was that um, it was frustrating for some gaming groups. I could see that, but I think it Pathfinder shows a lot of promise in my mind. It definitely has the flavor I think I would want to go for. So, anyways, but yeah, I've kind of talked you guys' ear off a bit today, and I'm sure I'll have another solo stream coming up in the coming weeks or whatever, depending on what happens. There might be a guest that either doesn't show up or who knows, maybe, it could be anything, right? So, either way, I'm sure I'll do more streams like this in the future. Next time I do a solo, though, I'll try to be prepared for it. I will try to do one where I talk about something specific, whether it's my world or world building, and we'll just focus on that. Or maybe I'll just decide to pull out some paper and map, or brainstorm like a city, or brainstorm a gaming session or a one shot. Maybe I'll do that next time. So it'll be a little bit less rambly, a little bit more focused on an objective. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks, Daniel, for interacting. You made this a bit more fun, and I appreciate that. And I made it the full hour, so yay me. For as tired as I am, and as much as I was yawning early on. I will try to go in and timestamp this the next couple days or something. And I will hopefully get a schedule up of who my guests are going to be and when. And I will post that over in the Discord in the announcements. And I will post that up in Instagram and the Facebook page for Master the Game and Twitter and all that stuff. So maybe I'll put it up on my website too. So thanks again for watching. And I will see you guys next time. Game on.